All right, so we'll say good morning. Have a beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Kuf Yud Aleph, 111. And we are picking up on Kuf Yud on the base 110b. And we are picking up 5 lines up from the bottom at the 2 dots. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors of this morning's shir. To thank our monthly Talmud Torah sponsor, Alan and Sue Marowitz and family, Jason, Deborah, Justin, Rebecca, Mindy, Simcha, and all of the grandchildren, for dedicating the Shiurim and Droshos this month in the merit of a refuah shlema for Sue, Shulamis Tova Bas Mindel. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah sheet, together with Kol Choli, so will have a complete and enduring refuah. We thank our Week of Learning sponsors, Yehuda and Jennifer Goodhart, for dedicating the learning this week in memory of Jennifer's father, Yishai Zalman ben Lazar. Ira and Miriam Grossman for dedicating the Shiurim and Droshos this week in memory of Miriam's father, Leonard Howard. Aryeh ben Moshe Halevi, and we thank our DAF sponsors for today, Sammy and Malka Esterson and family, for dedicating the DAF in honor of the 94th birthday of Mr. Morton Esterson, Mordechai ben Yonah. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, he will enjoy, first of all, a beautiful birthday, and in Yirtz Hashem, many years of Gesund ad mea ve'esrim shanim tovos. And with that, let us begin. So, Mamish, a very beautiful DAF ahead of us today. A little bit more time with remedies. So the Gemara says as follows. Remember again, referencing back to yesterday's daf a little bit. So the Mishnah says, so the Gemara said, liarkona. Liarkona means for jaundice. Remember again, one of the cures that the Gemara gave for jaundice was train b'shichra ume'akar. You take 2 of the ingredients, right? Remember again, the Mishnah, the Gemara gave a list of 3 different ingredients. You take 2 of the aforementioned ingredients, mix it together with beer, and that causes jaundice. There's only one issue. The Gemara said, ume akar. It also causes sterility. So whereas you're going ahead and taking care of the jaundice, you are causing sterility. So the Gemara says, umishari. Is it permitted for a man to make himself sterile? So the Gemara says, Vahatanya, we learned, minayin l'sirus ba'adam shu aser. How do I know that a person, I will say, sirus literally means castration. That's literally what it means. But again, what it means is halacha l'maisa, a man is not permitted to do something that renders him incapable of having children. He's not permitted to go ahead and make himself sterile. So how do I know this? Shu aser Talmud lomar uba'artzechem lo sa'asu. Pasuk says, and in your land you shall not do this. You shall not do this. Now both say, now the truth is this pasuk is actually referring to the types of animals that you are not permitted to go ahead and offer on the Mizbeach. But the Gemara darshans ultimately again that bachem lo sasu. You may not go ahead and make yourself sterile as well. Div Rabbi Chanina. So therefore, again, even though the individual is suffering from jaundice, how is he permitted to go ahead and engage in a remedy which halacha l'maisa makes him sterile? To which the Gemara says, "Hani milihecha de kamechavin, hacha me'atzmahu." So we'll say, when is there a prohibition to make oneself sterile? That's when that's your kavana. That's your intent. You intentionally do it. Here, what's your intention? Your intention is to go ahead and take care of the jaundice, right? That's your intention. The sterility kind of is just an unfortunate byproduct of the treatment, but l'maisa, that's not your intention. To which the Gemara says, Dam Rabbi Yochanan, harotze sheyisares tarnagol, because Rabbi Yochanan said if one wants to castrate a tarnagol, a rooster, yitel karbalto umistaris me'ilav. You remove its crest, and it kind of becomes, sterile on its own. So we'll say, see, even though normally you're not permitted to sterilize animals. Now, the truth is, this is a bigger discussion in halacha. This comes up all the time, especially, with pet owners, about neutering or sterilizing, castrating one's animals. So the Gemara says, if one wants to go ahead and let's say sterilize the rooster, so I can't do that straight out, but what can I do? I could take off its crest. And apparently if you remove the crest of the rooster, the de facto result is that the rooster is sterilized. So therefore you see from here that doing something which, now again, what's the effect of removing the crest? Removing the crest is not castrating the animal, but yet you see that for some reason this sterilizes the animal. And even though normally I'm not permitted to go ahead and sterilize an animal, if I go ahead and remove the crest, that apparently seems to be permitted. since the sterilization is then simply a byproduct. So maybe over here also, since the individual's intention is not to sterilize himself, but it's to cure his jaundice, even though sterilization is the byproduct, halacha l'maisa is permitted. To which the Gemara says, no. The rooster case is not a good example. V'ha'amar of Ashi, Ramos ruchahu dinakitale. So it's actually very interesting. Apparently, removal of the crest of the rooster doesn't really physically go ahead and sterilize the animal. What it does is it takes away the rooster's masculinity. So with the crow is his sign of the crest is his sign of masculinity. When you emasculate the rooster, effectively again he's unable to mate. So the Gemara says Ella Besaris. So perhaps when the Mishnah says that you can go ahead and drink this concoction in order to go ahead and remedy the jaundice, it's only a person who's already sterile. If a person is already sterile, he's permitted to go ahead and take this remedy in order to cure his jaundice. I have Amra B'Kiyavar Abba Amra B'Yocham. 1 second, even if that's true. Hakol Modim, top of Kuf Yud Aleph. Hakol Modim Mechametz Achar Mechametz Shu Chayiv. The Rebbe said, this is talking about over here, that Halacha L'mai says as follows. A carbon mincha, right? A carbon mincha, meal offering, is not permitted to become chametz, right? And if you allow it to become chametz, that is an Isser Da'oraisa. What happens if Ruvain went ahead and made the mincha chametz, and then Shimon came along and furthered the chimutz process? So you might have said, well, 1 second, Shimon didn't really do anything. At the end of the day, Ruvain already made it chametz. So what is Shimon actually accomplishing or doing? Yet, the Gemara says, everyone agrees, b'mechametz achar mechametz. Everyone agrees that halacha l'maisa, if Reuven already made the mincha chametz, and Shimon comes along and contributes to the chimutz process, shu chayiv, that Shimon is chayiv. Shneimar lo se'afeh chametz, lo sa'aseh chametz. The pasuk says, because the one pasuk says, you shall not bake it, bake it chametz, and you shall not make it chametz. So I'll say, so what do you see from there? You see from there that even though Reuven made the mincha chametz, if Shimon comes along and contributes to that process, he is chayiv as well. So too, the mesaris achar mesaris shu chayiv. Furthermore, I'm going to say, literally translated, castration after castration is also chayiv. What does that mean? Shnei Amar. This is actually very interesting. The pasuk says, Rabbi say, now remember, these psukim that were quoted over here are talking about by karbanos, the type of animals that you are not permitted to offer up in a sacrificial capacity. So the Torah says, uma'uch. So we'll say, ma'uch means crushed testicles. Kasus means cut, and nosuk means detached. So the vikaros. So the Gemara says as follows: Imal karus chayiv. Now both say, if halacha l'maisa, I'm chayiv for offering up an animal that is karus. And I will say karus means that halacha l'maisa, the testicles are detached, but still within the sac. So in other words, they're still on the body of the animal, but they're not attached anymore. So if I'm chayiv for karus, al nosuk, or both say nosuk, is when literally the testicles are totally detached from the body. So if I'm chayiv for karus, where at least it's still kind of on the body, I'm certainly going to be chayiv for karus. To which the Gemara says, Imal karus chayiv al nosuk kol shekein el lahavi nosek achar kores. Rather, I both say what it means is as follows: that halacha l'maisa, I am chayiv. Let's say an animal has testicles which are detached, but still within the sac on the body. And then I come along and I remove them from the body of the animal. I am chayiv for that. I will say, I haven't really done anything of impact. In other words, if the testicles are already detached, either hanging in the sac of the animal, that's fine, but lemaisa, they're not functioning in any type of way. So if I would have thought that once they're already detached, right, then halacha lemaisa, if I were to actively now remove them from the body, that I'm not really doing anything of substance, yet I'm chayiv. But say that's the case of mesares achar mesares, castrating after castrating. The Gemara says, therefore, again, you see from here that what? You see from here that even if somebody is quote-unquote already castrated, doing something which furthers that process, even though, again, physiologically, I'm not really doing anything, but lamais, I'm still chayiv. So let's go back for just a moment. We're trying to figure out the case. Remember, we have a very specific question here. Very specific question, which is, the Gemara is giving me a remedy for jaundice, right? And the remedy is to drink this concoction and to drink this drink, but the result of it is that it causes sterility. So the Gemara is trying to figure out, how are you permitted to cause sterility? So the answer the Gemara gave is, it must be someone who's already sterile. To which the Gemara now has effectively shown that even if someone is already sterile, there is still a prohibition to go ahead and do more that quote unquote furthers the sterility. Now, when I say furthers the sterility, you're not really doing anything that has a physiological impact, but you'd be doing something that has a physical impact. In other words, biologically, you're not doing anything different. He's already sterile, but Lamaisi, see, you can't go ahead and continue that process forward. To which the Gemara says, you're right, Ve'ela bizakein. We must be talking about an old person, an old man who we're assuming lacks the ability to have children. And I will say, now again, the assumption over here is that this is a result of impotence, right? That this is a result, ultimately, again, that he's just unable, physically unable to go ahead and have children. So such a person is effectively castrated. Such a person is effectively sterile. So perhaps he is permitted to go ahead and drink this remedy for jaundice. I have Rabbi Yochanan, hein hechziruni le'na'aruses. This is interesting. So the Gemara says elsewhere, Rabbi Yochanan discusses a particular remedy that they had for impotence, and Rabbi Yochanan said, this particular remedy restored me to my youthful vigor. Shabbos says, so you see from here that what? That Allah Kalamaisi, even once a person is old, right? Even though normally old age may bring with it a certain level of impotence, but halacha lemaisa, that can be cured. So therefore, such an individual certainly should not be permitted to drink something which would cause sterility. Ella bi'isha. We'll say very interesting. Rather, it must be who is permitted to drink this particular remedy for jaundice that also results in sterility. It must be a woman. It must be a woman. I will say, now what does that mean, bi'isha? Look at Rashi. Rashi says, Ella bi'isha she'ena mitzuva b'peri v'rivya. Remember again, a woman does not have a mitzvah of procreation. Kedarmina bi'yevamis peru uravu umilu asars v'kivshua. Ish shedarko lechabesh ve'in darko shal isha lechabesh. So this is actually very interesting. Halacha lemaisi, the Gemara is suggesting that the mitzvah of period v'rivya, of procreation, rests upon the man, does not rest upon a woman. Now, both say, now because of that, the pashtos, the reason that because a man has the mitzvah of period v'rivya, therefore anything which causes sterility will be problematic. But perhaps because a woman does not have the mitzvah of period v'rivya, of procreation, so perhaps for her causing sterility does not pose a problem. So maybe when the Gemara allows one to drink this remedy for jaundice, even though it causes sterility, that's dafka for a woman and not for a man. I ul Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka damar al shneim hu omer vayivarech osam elokim vayomer lahem peru uravu. But according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, who says no, the mitzvah period, the mitzvah procreation is on the man and the woman. My ikala meimar. So what is there to say? The Gemara says, you're right, bizikino inami ba'akara. Perhaps it's talking about an older woman, or perhaps it's talking about a barren woman. So we'll say, so by an older woman or by a barren woman, either of these women are physically incapable of having children, and therefore halacha l'maisa, they would be permitted to drink the remedy for jaundice, even though it results in sterility. So as I said, that ends the sugya. This general sugya of sterility is quite fascinating in halacha. Remember again, halacha l'maisa, we accept the fact that the mitzvah period, the mitzvah procreation, is a mitzvah upon a man, and not a mitzvah upon a woman, which is very interesting because as a result of that, there is much more halachic latitude to engage in procedures which cause sterility in women than men. Right? A man, for all effective purposes, barring any type, except for like health reasons, a man is not permitted to engage in any type of medicinal process that would cause sterility. That is an Isser D'Oraisa. A woman, on the other hand, again, in a certain situations of need, I don't talk, again, obviously not about life-threatening situations, but even in other situations of need, so halacha l'maisa, removal of reproductive organs by women is a little bit easier to navigate in halacha than by men, as again, because a woman is not mitzvah, because she is not commanded regarding perivrivia, procreation, there is a bit more halachic room in which to navigate. Again, certainly a more complicated sugya, but quite fascinating that it's being brought up over here. Good. Says the Mishnah, like continuing again in remedies, or what you're allowed to do on Shabbos. Hachoshesh b'shinov. Let's say someone is having tooth pain. Tooth pain. So we'll say, normally what would you do for tooth pain? You would normally drink vinegar. That's how you would deal with tooth pain. So therefore the Mishnah says, Hachoshesh b'shinov. If one is having tooth pain, lo yigamea b'henes hachometz. One should not sip vinegar on Shabbos. And I'm both saying that the reason you don't sip vinegar on Shabbos is why? Because remember again, healthy people don't sip vinegar. That's just the way that it is. So therefore, if you do that on Shabbos, it is clear that you are doing that for medicinal purposes. And remember, as we said, anything you do for medicinal purposes on Shabbos, that is clearly for medicinal purposes on Shabbos, is prohibited. But what can you do? Avamatabelhu kidarko. What you can do, Rabbi say, is go ahead and dip your bread and dip your food in vinegar and eat it. And kind of as a result of you eating the food or eating the bread, your teeth will get treated with the vinegar, which is another way of saying what Rabbi say. See, it's uncommon to sip vinegar. Therefore, to do that on Shabbos is overtly engaging in medicinal healing. But it's very common. Vinegar was a dip. You could dip your food in vinegar. So what you can do on Shabbos is dip your food, dip your bread, eat normally. Obviously, de facto, what's going to end up happening is the vinegar is going to help your toothache. But lemaisa, you are engaging in a medicinal healing by way of normative eating. So that halacha lemaisa, the Gemara says, is permitted. Vim nisrape. And if as a result of just having your regular meal and doing your regular dipping, you are healed, then you are healed. Next, hachoshesh b'masnav. Both if one is having groin pain, lo yosuch iyayin v'chometz. You cannot go ahead and apply to the area wine and vinegar. So apparently, again, that also was the normal way to heal groin pain. Avasachu es hashemen. But you can go ahead and put on oil. So we'll say, because apparently applying oil to the groin area or any part of the body was considered to be a normative practice. People would do that even for non-medicinal purposes. For lo shemen vered, however, again, you can't use rose oil. Why can't you use rose oil? The Gemara says, because b'nei malachim sachem b'shemen vered, al makosein. Shekein darkol lasuch b'chol. Because we'll say rose oil, which apparently was very, very expensive and very rare, was really only used by royalty for wound care. So therefore, I will say again, therefore regular people would not use rose oil except in very extenuating health situations. So therefore, the Gemara says, as much as we said that you could apply oil to the affected area, because again, people put oil on their body all the time, even during the week. So lav dafka, it appears that you're doing something medicinal. That's only regular oil. But rose oil, which was expensive, unique, and really only used by royalty, the only reason a regular person would do that was because of an acute health situation. And therefore, Allah Chalamais, you cannot put that on Shabbos. Rabbi Shimon says, Kol Yisrael b'nei malachim. Oh, it's actually very beautiful. Rabbi Shimon says, all Jews are royalty. All Jews are royalty, and therefore, halacha l'maisa, you could go ahead and use rose oil on Shabbos as well. Good, Abba, so let's analyze. Says the Gemara. Ramili Rav Acha Aricha, so Rav Acha, the tall one, that's I guess how he was known. Rav Acha, the tall one, Dehu Rav Acha bar Papa, who was Rav Acha bar Papa, said to Rabbi Avo, Tanan, hachoshesh b'shinav lo yigameh b'hanes hachometz. So the Mishnah said, if one is having a toothache, so one can't sip vinegar. L'meimra dechometz ma'ale l'shaynabos, and that would seem to indicate to us that what? That vinegar is beneficial for the teeth. Right? The fact that you're telling me that I can't sip vinegar on Shabbos indicates to me that vinegar is beneficial to the teeth. The Gemara says, Hoksiv, but the Pasuk says in Mishlei, kechometz l'shinayim uke'ashan le'einayim. The pasuk says, right, talking about sin, that sin is like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, which I will say sounds like what? Vinegar is detrimental and harmful to the teeth. Lokasha habikiyuha depri habechala. So we'll say there are different types of vinegar. So what's the type that's harmful to the teeth? It's what the Gemara calls kiyuha. Kiyuha is wine that comes from underdeveloped grapes, which effectively never really becomes wine. It's really vinegar. So that wine that comes from undeveloped grapes, so that's harmful to the teeth. Versus real bona fide vinegar is actually a helpful remedy. The other possibility is hava ha bechala. Both are talking about regular vinegar. Ha di'ikamaka, ha dalakamaka. We will say the impact of vinegar on the body depends on whether or not one has a wound. Ikamaka, if one has a wound, masi, then vinegar heals. Lekamaka, but if one doesn't have a wound, then merafi. Ultimately, again, vinegar actually harms. So therefore, again, if one has a toothache, then einachinami, the vinegar will help immensely. Excuse me. If one does not have a toothache, if one is just simply ingesting vinegar, the vinegar actually will be harmful to the individual. Good. The Mishnah said, "Lo yigameh behenes nachometz." So you should not go ahead and sip vinegar. I v'hatanya lo yigameh upolet, aval megameh ubolea. But we learned elsewhere that really what you can't do is you can't go ahead and sip the vinegar and then spit it out, because I will say if you're sipping the vinegar and then spitting it out, that has the appearance that what? That has the appearance like you're doing it for medicinal purposes, like you're washing with it and then spitting it out. But to go ahead and sip the vinegar and then to swallow it, that's going to be totally fine. To which the Gemara says, Amar Abaye, you're right. Ki tnan masnisin megamea upole tnan. You're right. Abaye says when the Mishnah says that you're not permitted to sip vinegar on Shabbos to take care of a toothache, that's when you're sipping and spitting. So if you're sipping it and then spitting it out, that's when it's problematic. But einachinami, if you were to go ahead and sip it and swallow it, it would be fine. Rava says, afilu tima megamea ubolea. Rava says, no, it's not true. Even if we say that halacha l'maisa, you're going ahead and you could even say that both cases are talking about where you're swallowing it. Kan lifnei tibul, kan la'achar tibul. But say everything depends on when you're doing this. If you're going ahead and sipping vinegar as you sit down for a meal, then it has the appearance that the vinegar that you're sipping is part of the meal. And as long as it has the appearance that it's part of the meal, then it doesn't look medicinal in nature. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, you could go ahead and do it. On the flip side, if you finished your meal and now you want to begin to sip vinegar, that's problematic. Why? Because since the meal is over, the only reason you'd be sipping vinegar is for medicinal purposes, and that will be problematic on Shabbos. To which the Gemara says, I don't understand the nema midlifnei tibul shari la'achar tibul nami shari. But why don't we say, if going ahead and sipping the vinegar is permitted at the beginning of the meal, it should certainly be permitted at the end of the meal. In other words, what the Gemara is suggesting is as follows. Really, when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos, we don't really look at situations, but rather we look at actions. And therefore, again, if a particular action is going to be permitted, so in other words, we'll say, for example, I understand the difference between the act of sipping and spitting versus sipping and swallowing. I hear that distinction, right? Sipping and spitting looks medicinal. Sipping and swallowing looks consumptive, right? It looks like you're eating something. But the notion of Rava's idea that sipping and swallowing, if you do it at the beginning of the meal, is permitted. But if you do it after the meal, is prohibited. Says the Gemara that doesn't really make sense. If the act of sipping and swallowing is permitted, once it's permitted at the beginning of the meal, it should be permitted after the meal as well. We should say that once something is permitted at the beginning of the meal, lifnei tibul means as before you begin to dip your bread, which means the beginning of the meal. So once something is permitted at the beginning of the meal, it should be permitted after the meal as well. Because Rava holds of the concept of hoil. Now, say hoil means Once something is permitted here, right, in this circumstance, it's permitted in a different circumstance as well, which is another way of saying that halacha l'maisa, we look really more at the nature of the action than as the circumstance which surrounds it. As Rava said, there is nothing that is permitted on Shabbos that is Asr on Yom Kippur. Or Rava say, Yom Kippur and Shabbos, right? Yom Kippur is called Shabbos Shabboson. So therefore, once something is permitted on Shabbos, by definition, it's permitted on Yom Kippur. The Gemara says, "Lekamidi the b'Shabbos shari b'Yom Kippurim aser, hoil the b'Shabbos shari b'Yom Kippurim nami shari." Once something is permitted on Yom Kippur, it's permitted on Shabbos as well. That's the concept of hoil. Once a particular action is permitted in one circumstance, it should become permitted in all circumstances. Once something is permitted on Shabbos, it's permitted on Yom Kippur. To which the Gemara says, "You're right. Hadr bei Rava mehach." You're right. Rava recanted this position. Or supposed to remember again, we're trying to figure out that there is a brisa that says the Mishnah says you can't sip vinegar in order to heal a tooth ailment. We have a brisa that says that you are not permitted to sip and spit, but you can sip and swallow. To which Abai says they're not contradicting each other. The Mishnah is a case of sipping and spitting. Rava said no. The Mishnah is also a case of sipping and swallowing. So why is it asr? Rava says because in the case of the Mishnah, you're sipping and spitting after the meal is over. After the meal is over. Then it's prohibited. Why? Because it's clear you're doing it for medicinal purposes. The Bryce was talking about a case where you're sipping and sipping and swallowing at the beginning of the meal. If it's at the beginning of the meal, then it has the appearance that Allah you're doing it for meal purposes, consumption purposes. To which the Gemara says, I don't understand. But Rava, you hold of the idea of hoyo, that once something is permitted in one context, it becomes permitted in a different context. So right, once something is Asr on Shabbos, it's Asr on Yom Kippur. Once it's Mutter on Shabbos, it's Mutter on Yom Kippur. So too, again, we should say, once sipping and swallowing is permitted at the beginning of the meal, it should be permitted at the end of the meal as well. To which the Gemara says, you're right, Hadr Bey Rava Meach. You're right, Rava recanted his position, not of Hoil Rabosai, but he took back, or he backtracked, took back his position ultimately again on the interpretation of the Mishnah. To which the Gemara says, Mimai Damehach Hadrabe, Dilma Meahi Hadrabe. How do you know that he retracted his position on explaining the Mishnah? Maybe he retracted his position on Hoil, and he doesn't hold of Hoil anymore. To which the Gemara says, Lo Sakadaitcha Desanya, Kol Chayve Tvilas Tovlim Kedarkim Beim Tishabav. No, because we also remember again, Rav was on record as saying, anyone who's obligated to go to the mikvah can go to the mikvah on a normal way on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur. Whatever is permitted on Yom Kippur is going to be permitted on Tisha B'Av, which Rav say ultimately is the concept of Hoil. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, the Gemara rejects, or Rava recants his position, and therefore the interpretation follows Abaye. That Rav say halacha l'maisa. So the consumption of vinegar will be permitted when one is swallowing. So if you're sipping and swallowing, apparently again that'll be permitted. The Mishnah's prohibition on sipping vinegar is sipping and spitting. Sipping and spitting has the clear appearance that halacha l'maisa, one is doing something medicinal in nature. Sipping and swallowing will be permitted. Beautiful. Let's remember again, the Mishnah said if one is having groin pain, so halacha l'maisa, the Mishnah said you can't go ahead and put on their wine or vinegar because people only did that for medicinal purposes, but you can smear oil there, right? You could go ahead and apply oil because apparently people would apply oil even for non-medicinal purposes. To which the Gemara says, and I remember it again. Rabbi Shimon said that, however, what can't you do? You can't go ahead and apply rose oil. Why can't you apply rose oil? Because again, rose oil was only used by monarchy, and therefore a regular person apparently would only use rose oil maybe like in the most dire of circumstances. So therefore, if you use rose oil that has the clear appearance of medicinal remedies, it will be prohibited on Shabbos. Rabbi Shimon says every Jew is royalty, and therefore you could use rose oil on Shabbos. To which the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda Amarav, Halacha Rabbi Shimon. The halacha follows Rabbi Shimon, and you could use rose oil for groin pain on Shabbos. L'meimra, the Rav Rabbi Shimon Svirle. Both say, is that to say that Rav holds like Rabbi Shimon? That after all, V'hamar Rav Simi Barchia, Mishmei de Rav, Hai Misuchria Dinezaisa. They both say, Misuchria Dinezaisa. Look at the last Rashi on the Daf. Rashi says, Beged Karchin Bebarza Chavish Shal Cheres, Mipnei She'in Nekev Shabbos. We'll say, if you have a barrel of wine, and in that barrel has a hole. And let's say, again, the opening is a little bit uneven, so therefore you can't use a regular stopper. What you would do is you would plug the hole with a rag, right? You'd put a beggar, you'd put a garment, a piece of cloth in there. So we'll say, listen to this. So Rav said that halacha l'maisa, this rag that's used as a stopper for the barrel, amud beis, asr lahaduke biyama tava. Halacha l'maisa, you are not permitted to go ahead and plug the barrel with that rag on Yom Tiv. Then I both say, now why not? Now why not? Because the issue is, when you use that piece of cloth ultimately as your barrel stopper, what ends up happening? Halacha l'maisa, you end up squeezing out liquid from the cloth. That's just the de facto reality. You end up squeezing out liquid from the cloth. Now I will say, now the act of squeezing out liquid from the cloth, Rashi points out, could be problematic on two levels. Number one, it could be schita. They both say, in general, squeezing liquid out of something is an issue of schita, squeezing, which could be dash, which could be the malacha of threshing, or by garments, squeezing out liquid could also potentially be malavein, laundering. Either way, you can't do it on Shabbos. Now, I both say, now understand, what is that called? That's called the malacha she'en tzricha legufa, davar she'en miskavein, right? That's not my intention. Now, Rabbi Shimon is on record as saying that a davar she'en miskavein is mutter, yet Rav is saying over here that it is aser. So clearly, Rav can't hold like Rabbi Shimon, to which the Gemara says, this case is different. Why? Bahi afilu Rabbi Shimon moda. Both say in this case, even Rabbi Shimon agrees. Why? The Gemara says, the Abayi Rav Amitar Bayu. Moder Rabbi Shimon b'psik reisha v'lo yom. So most remember again, even Rabbi Shimon, who holds that a davar she'en miskavein, a malacha for which you do not have intent, is mutter, agrees in the case of psik reisha. But so we saw this a number of times. So psik reisha means what? When the act that you're doing inevitably results in malacha, that is called a psik reisha. Even Rabbi Shimon agrees that halacha l'maisa, that is aser. So even though Rabbi Shimon agrees that under normal circumstances, if a malacha occurs and it's not your kavara that the malacha occurs, it's mutter. Rabbi Shimon will agree that halacha l'maisa, in a situation where the malacha definitely occurs, that such an act will be aser. So we'll say, when you go ahead and you plug up the opening of that barrel with a cloth, by definition, there is no way to avoid schita. There is no way to avoid squeezing, and therefore even Rabbi Shimon will agree that such an act is aser. But I will say, Rav says elsewhere that the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda, namely that a davar she'en miskavein, that even if you do something that results in unintentional malacha, that it's aser. Rav Chanan bar Ami Amar Shmuel halacha Rabbi Shimon, Rav Chia bar Avin Masnila below Gavri, Rav Amar halacha Rabbi Yehuda, Ushmuel Amar halacha Rabbi Shimon. So we'll say, so again, bottom line is, we see explicitly that Rav holds like Rabbi Shimon. That's the halacha. So we'll say, if Rav holds like Rabbi Shimon, so if Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda, now we'll say, remember again, the machlokes of Rabbi Shimon being espoused over is one of the most famous machlokes in Shabbos about a davar she'en miskavein. What happens, Rabbi, say, if you go ahead and you do something that results in a malacha that you did not intend for? Both say the classic paradigmatic case is, I want to drag my chair from one side of my yard to the second side of my yard, but doing so may result in the creation of a furrow, right? The creation of a furrow in the ground, right? Creating a furrow is the malacha of choresh, of plowing, but that's not my intention to create a furrow. So can I move the chair or not? Rabbi Yehuda will say no, because even though it's not your intention to create a furrow, it is still aser. Rabbi Shimon will say yes, as long as it's not your intention, it's absolutely mutter. So I will say, we have now Rav on record saying the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbi Shimon. Fine. So we'll say, what's the problem? The problem is, I just had a statement of Rav saying that the halacha follows Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah. Right? Remember again, Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah says that anyone is permitted to apply rose oil. Why? Right? In an affected groin area. Why? Because halacha l'maisa, all Jews are royalty. So what's going on over here? To which you want to say, Allah Amar Rava, Ani va'arisha bechabura. So Rava says, me and the lion of our group, which means the best Talmud in our shir. And who is that? Umanu Rabbi Chia bar Avin. We said, what it means is like this. That what Rav was saying was, halacha Rabbi Shimon, v'lav mitame. The halacha follows Rabbi Shimon, but I will say not because of Rabbi Shimon's logic. Right? So the halacha does follow Rabbi Shimon, namely that anyone could apply rose oil, ultimately again to the groin area on Shabbos, but not because of the reason he espoused. What does that mean? So if he said that halacha follows Rabbi Shimon, that you're permitted to apply rose oil to the groin area on Shabbos, v'lav mitame, but not because of his reasoning. The ilu Rabbi Shimon savar masi, the Rav savar lo masi. Maybe Rabbi said Rabbi Shimon allows it even though it heals. Maybe Rav disagrees, and Rav says the reason you could do it is because rose oil doesn't really have any medicinal qualities. That's not true. The savar Rav lo masi v'hamid diktani b'nei malachim sachin amako seyen shemen veren michlal demasi. But the fact that the Mishnah said that royalty applies rose oil for wound care indicates to us that halacha l'maaseh does work. Ella halacha k'Rabbi Shimon deshari. Rather, what it means is like this: the halacha follows Rabbi Shimon that halacha l'maaseh, the application of rose oil on an affected area, ultimately is mutter on Shabbos v'lav mitameh, but not for the reason he said. Why? The Rabbi Shimon savar afagav dulo shchiach shari. Remember again, Rabbi Shimon's logic is, even though rose oil is uncommon, and therefore, Rabbi say it is clear that when you do it, you're doing it for medicinal purposes, he still says it's permitted. Rabbi say, now the reason he says it's permitted is why? Because he holds every Jew has the status of being royal, of royalty. The Rav Savarav says, Ishchiach in v'ilo shchiach lo. Rabbi say, Rav says you can use rose oil when? Only if it's commonly available, widely available. So if it's widely available and everybody uses it, then yes, halacha l'maaseh, you can use it on Shabbos as well. V'ilo shchiach, but ultimately low. But I will say, if you live in a locale where rose oil is not commonly permitted, and therefore again it's very expensive, only used by royalty, you would not be permitted to use that on Shabbos because halacha l'maaseh, that would have the clear appearance that one is doing it for medicinal purposes. Ube'asra de Rav shchiach mishnah de varda, and I will say in Rav's locale where Rav lived, so rose oil was easily available. So because rose oil was easily available, in Rav's locale, rose oil was really no different than any other oil. I will say now again, everyone agrees that halacha l'maaseh, if one is having groin pain on Shabbos, that one could apply regular oil to the area. Why? Because again, the application of regular oil doesn't have the appearance of medicinal healing, since people would anoint themselves with oil all of the time. And apparently in Rav's locale, rose oil was very easily found as well, and therefore halacha l'maaseh, it wasn't unique to apply that type of oil, and therefore that would be permitted on Shabbos as well. So therefore, I will say the way the Gemara kind of comes out is rose oil. The nature of rose oil depends. If it's widely available, then it's no different than any other oil, and therefore can be applied on Shabbos. If it's not widely available and only used, let's say again, by royalty, then enachinami, you should not apply that on Shabbos because that would have the clear appearance of engagement in medicinal healing. Beautiful. Hajjun Allah Shmona Sratzer. We'll say Mazel Tov. Let's go back to your new parak, Eluk Sharim. Says the Mishnah, Ve'elu ksharim shechayav naleh. So we'll say now, we're speaking at the malacha of kosher, the malacha of tying a knot on Shabbos. So our Mishnah is going to go through the different types of knots for which one is chayav on Shabbos. Ve'elu ksharim shechayav naleh. These are the types of knots for which you are chayav on Shabbos. Kesher hagamolin. So we'll say literally again a camel knot. We'll discuss what this means. Kesher hasafanim, a boat knot. Ukashem shu chayav al kishur and kachu chayav al heterin. Now we'll say there are two malachas There's the malacha of kshira, which is the malacha of tying, and there's the malacha of untying. So obviously, you're only chayiv for untying the type of knot for which you're chayiv for tying, which makes sense. There's sister malachas, right? So meaning if you weren't chayiv for tying the knot to begin with, you're certainly not chayiv for untying that knot. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Meir Omer kol kesher sheyachal atira ba'achas miyadav ein chayav l'lav. Rabbi Meir says, any knot that is so weak that it could be untied with one hand is not considered to be a knot for which you would be chayiv for on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, let's analyze. So remember again, the Mishnah gave two examples of a type of knot for which you would be chayiv for tying on Shabbos. One was the camel knot, and one was the boat knot. My kesher hagamalin, the kesher sapar. We both say, what does it mean? A camel knot and a boat knot. Ilema kitra the katri bizamama, the kitra the katri beistarida. Hi kesher she'en shal kayamu. So we'll say, remember again, a camel would often have a ring, and you would tie a rope around that ring to lead the camel. If you're talking about the knot that you tie in the rope in the ring, we'll say that's what's called the kesher she'en shal kayama. That's not really a knot that lasts, right? That's a temporary knot. And halacha l'maisa, you would not be chayav for that on Shabbos. Similarly, so the boat would have a ring attached to it, and again, if you're talking about the rope that you would tie through the ring, like to dock the boat, that's also not a lasting knot. So why would you be chayav for that on Shabbos? Elo kitra de zamama gufa udi istari gufa. Rather, we'll say the knot that they're talking about is the knot that kept the nose ring in, and the knot that keeps the ring on the boat. Those ultimately, again, are not kesher shel kayama, knots which endure. So we'll say, so again, halacha l'mais on Shabbos, for the malacha of kshira, I'm only chayiv for tying a knot that is meant to last for a long amount of time. So the example would be the knot which knots in the nose ring of the camel, or the knot which knots the ring to the boat. Those are the types of knots that are tied with the intention to maintain for a very long time. Therefore, you'll be chayiv. Rabbi Meir Omer Kol Kesha. So Rabbi Meir said, any knot that you could untie with one hand, you're not chayiv for on Shabbos. Boy Rav Achte Boy. So Boy Rav Achte Boy, Achli de Maracha. So also Rav Achte Boy, the brother of Maracha, asked the following question. Aniva le Rabbi Meir Mahu. So we'll say, according to Rabbi Meir, what happens if you have a bow? Let's say you tied a bow. So according to Rabbi Meir, we'll say, is that a knot for which you would be chayiv for on Shabbos or not? So do we say, Taimid Rabbi Meir, Mishum diachalatira bi'achas miyadafu, v'hanam yachalatira. So we'll say, do we say on one hand, like we say in the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir holds, any knot that you could easily untie with one hand is not considered to be a kesher shel kayama, an enduring knot, and therefore a bow can be untied with one hand. Or do we say, and therefore one would not be chayav for tying a bow on Shabbos? O Dilma, Taima Rabbi Meir mishum de lo mahadek v'ha mahadek. Or do we say no? What Rabbi Meir means is Rabbi say any knot that doesn't really stick, that doesn't really hold well, and could be easily pulled out with one hand. But a bow, even though again it can be pulled out with one hand, halacha l'maisa, it could remain, right? Halacha l'maisa can be a strong knot, and therefore maybe you should be chayav for it on Shabbos. To which the Gemara says, Teku. We'll have to wait for Eliyahu come to tell us, according to Meir, what to do about a bow. Now, we know halacha l'maisa on Shabbos, you are permitted to tie a bow on Shabbos. That's why you are permitted to go ahead and tie your shoes on Shabbos, right? Because the assumption is that halacha l'maisa, a bow, is not usually a kesher shel kayama. Person doesn't usually tie a bow as a long-term knot. Now, of course, what will be problematic on Shabbos would be double knotting your shoes, right? Or double bowing your shoes. That could be problematic on Shabbos because the act of double bowing, although again, shoes is always going to be a little bit different since the concept in general of tying the shoe is always an impermanent tie, always an impermanent knot, right? No one leaves their shoes on forever. So therefore, halacha l'maisa, by definition, that's an impermanent. But again, a bow in halacha is generally considered to be an impermanent knot, and therefore be permitted. But a double bow could, under certain circumstances, be problematic. Good. Let's go a little weiter. Says the Mishnah, right? Suppose say, there are other knots on Shabbos that you're not chayiv for at all, unlike the knot of the camels or the knot of a boat. So it's a contrast. The knot of the camel, the knot of the boat, is the paradigmatic example of a kesher shal kayama, a knot that endures. There are other knots for which you would not be chayiv for on Shabbos. For example, kosheres isha miftach chaluka, a woman could tie her blouse. So they used to have like these type of shirts where the woman would put it on and then would close it by tying a strap over each shoulder. That's an example, ultimately, again, of an impermanent knot. You could tie that on Shabbos. I'm sorry, v'chute sabka, or for that matter, the strings on her hat. We'll discuss this. V'shal psakya. Rashi says psakya over here is ezor rachav. So we'll say this actually translates as like a girdle, or the tying of a girdle. Urutsuos minal, shoestrings, right? Shoelaces. The sandal or sandal straps. The nodos yayin, or tying a wine skin. Bishemen, or an oil skin. Ukedera shalbasar. Or we'll say sometimes what they would do is they would tie like a piece of fabric or a piece of leather on top of a pot of meat which was cooking. So these are all examples of impermanent knots which can be tied on Shabbos. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Omer, kosher lifnei abehem b'shol shelo teisei. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says you can also go ahead and tie a rope in front of an animal so that it shouldn't go out of its stall. So let's say the animal is in a stall, you want to just tie rope so the animal doesn't go out. Such a rope is also considered to be an impermanent knot, and therefore one could do that on Shabbos. To which the Gemara says, Hagufa kashya, amrit yesh ksharan shein chayav l'alein kekesh hagamal kesh hasapanin, chiyuvu deleka ha isruika. So we'll say, the Gemara says the Mishnah is a little problematic. Because on one hand, the Mishnah says that you can go ahead and tie certain knots on Shabbos for which you will not be chayiv, like the knot, like a boat knot or like a camel knot. So what that sounds like is, you won't be chayiv midaraisa, but tying such knot will still be asr midrabanan. V'hadir tani koshra isha miftach chaluka afilu lechatchila. But then afterwards, the Mishnah says a woman could tie her blouse, which Rabbi says sounds like even lechatchila. So which one is it? Is it lechatchila mutter or is it asr midrabanan? This is what it means to say. What's very interesting. Yesh ksharan shein chayav l'alein kekesh hagamal kesh hasapanim. We'll say there are some knots for which you will not be chayiv midoraisa. So we'll say midoraisa if you tie a camel knot, which again is the knot that ties the nose ring into the camel, or a boat knot, which is the knot which fastens the ring to the boat itself, that is asur midoraisa. For they are considered to be kesher shel kayama, a knot that endures. Then there are other types of knots which you are not chayiv midoraisa, but you will be chayiv midrabanan. Umaynihu. What's an example of that? Top of Kuf Yod Beis. Kitra de kitri bizama, the kitra de kitri beistarida. Chiyuvahu delaka ha isura ika. We'll say then there are knots which are asr midrabanan. What's an example of an isra derabanan knot? That's a knot of the rope that you tie in the nose ring, or a knot that you, or the knot that you tie in the rope that goes in the ring of the boat. Those are knots that are not asr midoraisa but are asr midrabanan. And then there's a third category of knots which are totally permitted. Those are the examples in the Mishnah: a woman tying her blouse, tying your shoes, tying the girdle, tying the straps into the hat, wine skins, oil skins, stall of the animal, top of a pot. So therefore, we'll stop over here for today. But three categories of knots. Category number one, an isur d'oraisa. That's a kesher shel kayama. The example of that is the knot used to tie the nose ring in the nose of the animal. The knot used to tie the ring onto the boat. Those are isur d'oraisa. Isur d'rabbanan, next level, the rope you tie in the nose ring to lead the animal. The rope you tie in the ring of the boat to anchor the boat. Those are both say are semi-permanent. Therefore, halacha l'maisa mutter midoraisa, asur midrabanan. Third category of knots, clearly impermanent. Clearly impermanent. A woman tying her blouse, shoelaces, wine skins, oil skins, where it's clear that it's impermanent, halacha l'maisa, those types of knots mutter, even lechatchila. All right, so we'll stop over there for today. We'll pick up Emirat Hashem with more in the malacha of kshira. Emirat Hashem tomorrow. We'll see Yeshikoach. Again, davening in the shul parking lot. Emirat Hashem at 7 a.m. We'll broadcast it over Zoom as well. Yeshikoach.